All right, everybody, Eric Hayden here in the garden. The frequency of videos are picking up because the blooms are really kicking butt here in the garden. We are in the last couple days of April. A prior video, I started to show you some blooms. I talked about some of my favorite roses, such as Mr. Lincoln. I showed you Pope John Paul II, and also Veterans Honor, to name a few. One thing I want to mention is the difference in fragrant roses. Different varieties open quicker and last longer. So I want to kind of do a compare contrast short video. Mr. Lincoln, it's fragrant, but it opens quick, versus Veterans Honor, a rose that does not smell, it's not fragrant, but it lasts forever in a vase. So with roses, it's really a plus or minus. Some that are fragrant tend to open really quick, but you have that outstanding fragrance. Other ones hold that form for a long time and have a lot of substance and really long vase life, but they aren't fragrant. So we want to do that compare contrast between Mr. Lincoln, which is fragrant, doesn't last as long, and Veterans Honor, both reds, but Veterans Honor doesn't have that fragrance, but it lasts a long time. What about a rose in the middle? What about something that's fragrant and the bloom lasts a long time? We're going to talk about Dolly Parton as a variety and Pope John Paul II. So let's get to it. This is Mr. Lincoln. This is just a couple days after the prior video. Still looking really nice, but you'll notice a lot of the roses have already been spent. They are done. No problem with that, but it will go from this, which is about a picture perfect rose on Mr. Lincoln. Looks really, really good. And it will go from that to almost full-blown open, and then eventually this, where the petals are just kind of falling off. So I'd say, you know, with Mr. Lincoln, you get a bud like this maybe in the morning, so it's bud shaped. By afternoon, it could be that, or even this, you know, very pretty. And what I mean by that is it just opens really quick, and then within the next day or two, the petals are falling off, and they don't last as long. But you cannot beat this fragrance. It is just simply outstanding. So you can see we're probably about 50% through this first flush of blooms on Mr. Lincoln. Still recommend it. It's 1A and 1B, my favorite red roses. Mr. Lincoln, because of the fragrance and great growth. Look at those leaves and long stems. It's just, what a great growing rose. But the bloom doesn't last long in a vase. So my 1A or 1B would be Veterans Honor. Better, equally good at growing. It just doesn't have the fragrance. So before we hop over to Veterans Honor, what about two roses that are fragrant and the blooms last a decent long time? This is Dolly Parton. What a beautiful rose. Orangish red. You can usually find this in commerce pretty easily. It has great form, and what we mean by that is that center in the middle, a spiral shape. A lot of petals with this, a big bloom. You can see my hand for reference. Huge bloom, which is ironic with Dolly Parton. I'll leave that one alone. But really nice, you know, plant, great blooms, fragrant, and they last a long time. Not quite as good of a grower as Mr. Lincoln. This rose had some canker, but you can see, you know, planted at roughly the same time, not anywhere close. So average growth, but bloom-wise, it's going to hold, and it's going to be fragrant. So what about another rose in the middle? Something that holds like Dolly Parton, has good form, and lasts a while, but is a good grower. That would be Pope John Paul II. You can see it on the left. Little compare contrast. It's a great grower. It's not as tall as Mr. Lincoln. Mr. Lincoln is a pretty tall rose, but Pope John Paul II, I would definitely classify that as a great grower. You can see the difference between Dolly Parton and it. So it's kind of short and squat, but beautiful blooms. Some of these are past their peak because they've been on the bush for a while, but exhibition form. And what I mean by that is, look at that spiral shaped center. So wow, what a nice looking rose. Blooms in clusters, single stems, but just lots of blooms on this bush. So if you're talking fragrant roses, you cannot go wrong with Dolly Parton, Mr. Lincoln, or Pope John Paul II. If you're looking for something that grows well, Mr. Lincoln is your friend. The blooms don't last as long. And if you're looking for something where the blooms last a while and the growth is pretty good, just not as tall of a rose, Pope John Paul II. Just outstanding rose here for sure. So we're going to move from the fragrance garden. Not all of these are fragrant, but we do have our double delight. Dolly Parton, Pope John Paul II, Mr. Lincoln, and of course, Yolande Dargan, and the back and Secret as well. So most of those roses in those beds are fragrant. We're going to take a short walk over here to one of the first gardens we have, and those reds stand out right away. This is not Mr. Lincoln, this is Veteran's Honor. Beautiful red rose. One of the best, you know, just for pure form. And then the petals, they just have so much substance to them. Rain, dew, insects, thrips, just don't bother. It just looks outstanding. And they can last well over a week in a vase because of that substance in the bloom. One of the better exhibition roses. These are not the best examples, but you know, time and time again, they'll have a nice form to them. Does not have any fragrance, or at least to me. Some coworkers say they can detect a light fragrance. Mr. Lincoln is unmatched. You know, everybody says that has fragrance, but so this is a bloom on Veteran's Honor. Again, it's 1A to 1B for my favorite red roses. What it lacks in fragrance, it makes up for in that excellent form. And unlike Mr. Lincoln, I mentioned Mr. Lincoln will go kind of from this bud form to this form in the matter of a day. You know, if you get a hot day, that bloom's going to open. These Veterans Honors, it could be multiple days for this thing to open. And then when it gets to the open phase, like I kind of showed you in the beginning, it just sits there like that. So these petals don't fall off. I don't see one petal on the ground from Veterans Honor. You know, eventually the petals will fall off, but these last many, many, many days in the garden, even in heat and rain and things of that nature. And that's going to equate to vase life. So when you bring it inside, it's going to last a long time as well. So just kind of a short video to talk about the various roses. Some of my favorites, Veterans Honor for sure. It's good growing rose, very, very upright shape, and those blooms last forever. And you can't go wrong with Mr. Lincoln as well for fragrance. So those are my two favorite red roses. And then if you want some in-betweens, I mentioned Pope John Paul II. Little shorter rose, but great fragrance and pretty long bloom life. And then Dolly Parton, great bloom, one of the bigger blooms that you're going to see in the garden. Downside of that is it's not quite as tall of a grower as like a Mr. Lincoln or Veterans Honor, and it certainly is not as prolific as something like you saw with the Pope John Paul II. So that's it, today's video. Compare, contrast, red roses, Mr. Lincoln versus Veterans Honor, and then Dolly Parton and also Pope John Paul II. We'll kind of give a tour of these, but I want to try to keep these a little short so that you can sift through them pretty easily. As always, your biggest compliment is just sharing these pages. I know we've got a lot of people that grow roses out there, but this is definitely a backyard garden. I show you everything from black spot to thrips, everything ugly and pretty and in between. So this is a realistic gardener, do it all on my own. So I definitely encourage you to look back at some prior videos to see fertilization and spraying to get roses that look like this. Have a great day, everyone.